Welcome back into another episode of the Believe in Georgia Tech podcast. We're your co-hosts. That is RJ Schafer. I'm Jackson Caudell coming to you Tuesday night, 9:14. We had a little bit of a late rankings release. The college football playoff rankings just came out. Nothing new changed. This is the first show me and RJ have done together on the rankings. He was here a couple weeks ago. I was out. I was actually on my honeymoon during the bye week, so that's why I was absent a little bit. But RJ, how you doing, man?
Little under the weather, but we're here to talk Georgia Tech football as always. Excited to do that.
That's that time of year, man.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're gonna break down the rankings, talk about it a little bit. We'll get RJ's thoughts on Boston College. Obviously, he wasn't on the instant reaction show. Last I checked, I'll get the score pulled up, but Georgia Tech was losing to Georgia Southern. Last I checked, we haven't really talked much basketball. I know there hasn't really been a lot to talk about per se. Actually, now Georgia Tech is winning 57-50. So I really hope by the time that y'all are listening to this that Georgia Tech has won and I don't look like a fool. But before we get into everything tonight, if y'all are watching this, haven't subscribed to the channel yet, would love it if you do so. Like the video, hit that notification bell so you know when our new content goes live. Follow us wherever you get your podcast. Helps us out a ton. Really helps the show, helps grow the channel. Love all the support we get. Love all the support you guys show us in person and social media. It means a lot to us. And, we're biggest Georgia Tech game in like a decade coming up on Saturday. So we'll preview that a little bit. I guess let's start with the rankings. There wasn't much change. There was a lot of movement in the back end this week because I think Iowa was at 21. They lost. They dropped out. USF was at 24. They dropped out. They lost. Cincinnati was at like 23 or 22. They lost. There was a lot of just teams in the back half of the rankings that moved out, but there wasn't a ton. I wrote earlier today, had some people disagree with me, but I was actually worried Georgia Tech was going to move down, to be perfectly honest with you, for a couple reasons. So they were at 16 last week. USC was at 17. I figured USC would probably jump Georgia Tech because they beat Iowa, who was number 21. The team I was really curious to see was Texas, who was at 10 heading into last week. They got dusted by Georgia, 35-10. I mean, it was a beatdown. They actually fell to 17. I'm not saying I agreed with it or I would have thought it was fair, but I thought there was a distinct possibility that Texas was going to be in front of Georgia Tech just because of a lot of things, the SEC stuff, and then just Georgia Tech struggling with a team that's now 1-10, needing a last-second field goal to beat Boston College. But Georgia Tech is at number 16. Now, this is annoying me a little bit. They are putting Miami is at 13. I'm not really going to argue with that. Like, to me, I'll kind of get into why I'm just kind of indifferent to these rankings right now. To me, when they show these graphics about how the bracket is right now, they need to stop putting Miami because Miami's chances of making the ACC title game are like next to nothing. Now, it's still possible, and I get why they're doing it. They're the highest ranked ACC team. Miami checked in at number 13. They actually bumped up a couple spots. They utterly annihilated NC State on Saturday, which was a little bit of a tough look after having nearly 600 yards on Georgia Tech. But yeah, they moved up to 13. I think they need to show the team that has the best chance of getting to the ACC title, and it's like in that scenario, the odds-on favorite to win it, which is Georgia Tech. Like, I think it's just more responsible right now to show, hey, it's probably going to be Georgia Tech in that 11th spot playing Ole Miss, who was at number 6. But any big takeaways for you on the latest CFP?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this before the show. I think kind of the ACC placement is a little bit crazy, especially when you look at Miami, comparing the resume to Utah and comparing the resume to Notre Dame. I talked about this on the podcast, 2 weeks ago when the first initial rankings came out, talking about how ridiculous it is that Notre Dame is so much higher than Miami, even though Miami beat Notre Dame in a game that, essentially doesn't matter. They have similar schedules. And, a lot of Miami's best wins, again, something else we talked about in Louisville, in, SMU, and those types of games where that could be looked at as a ranked matchup that you played, but now Louisville and SMU are left off the top 25 and you're with, Tulane and Arizona State in the back end.
Yeah, and there are only 3 ACC teams ranked, so it's Miami at 13, Georgia Tech at 16, and then Virginia at 19. I didn't really think Virginia was going to move up. They also have a loss to NC State. They also have a loss to Wake Forest, but they look really good on Saturday against Duke. Like there was at one point where like Duke had less than 100 yards in like the third quarter. Like it was a beat down, and I was a little surprised. I thought Virginia could win, but so for me and. This is probably going to be an unpopular sentiment, but like me and you always try to do, like I just try to shoot it straight and try to be as objective as possible. So I get people being upset about these rankings. Like I think it's fair to see you only have one loss in the column, and you're behind a slew of 2-loss teams. Like USC has 2 losses. They're at 15. Utah is at 12. They have 2 losses. Miami obviously has 2 losses. Vanderbilt has 2 losses. I think for right now, I think it's – I just personally don't – I don't know if saying I don't care is the right phrase, but it's the one that comes to mind right now. It just doesn't really materially matter, I think, where Georgia Tech is right now. To me, and what I was saying to RJ before the show, as long as Georgia Tech beats Pitt, where you need to pay attention to where they are ranked is if they beat Georgia. If they beat Pitt and Georgia, those rankings become extremely important because of a possible at-large spot. If you were to lose the ACC championship, let's say to Virginia, because most likely if Georgia Tech beats Pitt, it will eliminate Miami, it would eliminate Pitt, and they would face either Virginia or SMU in the ACC championship game. I'm not saying you can't be upset. I'm not saying it's where they're ranked is correct. I'm just saying it doesn't mean anything right now. You need to handle your business Saturday, and then you need to handle your business against Georgia. And then to me, it becomes very important to where Georgia Tech is ranked. Like you're talking about having possibly the best win out of any team. Like you would have just among those, you would automatically have a better win than pretty much all those teams ranked above you. Like the reason Georgia Tech is being held back, and I'm just telling you, like from what the committee is saying, it's the strength of schedule, and it's the defensive performance right now. It is what it is, and to me, like I would have them probably a little higher. But it materially, it just doesn't matter right now. And I know that's probably not going to be a super popular opinion. But to me, as long as you handle your business against Pitt, and then it becomes – and even if you – I think as long as you beat Pitt, and even if you lost to Georgia, to me, it still doesn't matter, because then it's like, all right, just win the ACC title and you're in. Because at that point, like you're going to be at 11. Like there's just not a lot of upward mobility if you don't beat Georgia. Like, there's just not. So if you don't beat Pitt and you don't beat Georgia, like the rankings are just almost irrelevant for Georgia Tech, in my opinion.
Yeah, because if you think about it, talk about the other teams that are kind of above them in area. Look at Alabama. Look at the wins that they have. They've beat Georgia. They beat Mizzou. They beat Vanderbilt. Even if you were to go through and beat Pitt and Georgia in these next 2 weeks, the committee's going to have to look at that. Again, I know Alabama is a 2-loss team, but you're going to look at the argument of, okay, Georgia Tech's second best win is Pitt. Their third best win is probably a 5-5 Duke team,
I'd say by record it's Wake Forest. Wake
Forest
is probably going to win it. They're going to win at least 8 games.
Yeah.
But
wherever you want to go with it, Alabama's third best win is pretty much, unless Mizzou drops off the face of the planet, or Vanderbilt, or any of those teams, their third best win is going to be a ranked win. You just go down that schedule, their strength of schedule is a lot better. But I think Georgia Tech has a lot of clarity in knowing that you do control your destiny, even if you don't make it in as at large. Even if you do win the Georgia game, like you can control whether you win or not. Get into.
That's why I'm not as upset about these rankings as I think some are. And look, it's never my job to tell people how to feel about certain stuff. Like it's totally okay. Like I get it. But like to me, even if you beat Pitt and you don't jump up that much this upcoming week, like it's okay. Like you have a chance to make a statement against Georgia. Like if they beat Pitt, and let's say Oregon beats USC and you just jump up one spot to 15, or maybe Georgia Tech looks really impressive against Pitt and Vandy struggles against Kentucky or something, and you bump up to 14 or something like that. I think it doesn't help that Pitt dropped all the way out of the rankings, because now it's just going to be looked at as, oh, they beat another unranked team. I still wouldn't. I still would just hold my ground a little bit, and then, all right, see what happens with the Georgia game. And then, okay, if you beat Georgia, then that's when I really care about where the rankings are, because if Georgia Tech is still behind some teams or they don't make a big jump up, then it would be almost like, okay, now you have to win the ACC to get in, or it's, okay, could you lose the ACC championship and still get in? Because one thing I don't know, it was true with last year's committee, they didn't punish championship game losers hardly at all. I mean, SMU was still able to get into the playoff when they lost to Clemson. They kept them in over Alabama and Miami and all those teams that were in it, that were amongst the debate last year. Penn State, they didn't drop too far. Penn State and Texas both, they lost their conference championship games. But it's a different committee. So I don't know how they're going to treat championship game losers, because some of the things they're doing this year are a little bit different than years past. So that's just like my piece on it. I would just say, if you don't like it, I understand why, but it's like right now, just focus on beating Pitt and beating Georgia. And then to me, that's when, all right, need to show us some respect.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're not in a Miami situation where the fact where you go into the playoffs or not is dependent on your rankings, because Miami needs a miracle to get into the ACC championship.
Why you're seeing, I hate to cut you off, but that's also why you're seeing this big push from the ACC arguing about the Miami Notre Dame thing. Yeah. And like, that's why, because like Miami almost certainly has no path to the ACC championship game. It's very, very slim. I'm not going to get into all the tiebreakers and all that crap right now. But yeah, like that's why you're seeing that big push from the ACC to be like, hey, like Miami deserves a spot too. And because their only shot is really that large. Like Georgia Tech is clear as day. You beat Pitt, you get to the ACC title, and you can get to the playoff from there.
Now, do you think there's a world where two ACC teams could come in? Like if Georgia Tech wins out the rest of the season, Miami wins out, beats Pitt, do you think both of those teams could go in?
I don't know. I don't know who they're up against. Like, because to me, Oklahoma beating Alabama hurts Miami, because Oklahoma would have been out with a loss. Now, like, it's interesting because it's complicated, because I don't know who they're being argued against. Like if you look at the playoff bracket right now, like number 10 is Alabama. Like Alabama still has a clean path to get to the SEC title. I believe all they got to do is beat Auburn and then they're in. Now that's another scenario where it's like, okay, now if Auburn were to beat Alabama and knock them out of the playoff entirely, then you're opening up spots. Like as of right now, no. I don't, unless there's a little bit more chaos. Now, if Oklahoma had lost and you had that window open, now I'm not going to get into the whole, this is a Georgia Tech focused thing. I'm not going to get into the whole Miami Notre Dame thing. I personally would put Miami in over Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame's resume is not that much better than Miami's, if at all. And Miami beat them head to head. What's the point of playing these football games if we're just going to completely toss them away at the end of the season? But right now, I would say no. But unless there's some chaos, like that's my answer there. But yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on it. Like right now, it's like I think staying at 16 is fine. I thought there was a chance they could possibly drop one or two spots depending on what they did with Texas and USC. They did bump USC up, but they dropped Georgia Tech, or dropped Texas below Georgia Tech, moved Miami up. Vandy stayed the same. They didn't play this weekend, so I'm okay with it. It's just beat Pitt, get to the ACC title game. You beat Georgia, then let's all tune in on Tuesday night to see where the Yellow Jackets are. And then if they don't beat Georgia, it's just the goal is simple. beat Virginia, beat SMU, whoever. Any other thoughts on the rankings?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, since you weren't here for the instant reaction Saturday, I do got to get your thoughts on what transpired Saturday against Boston College. I'll just kind of let you have the floor because everybody heard me in Boston Saturday.
Yeah, I think the Georgia Tech team of the past two games is unlike what we saw earlier in the season. You know, we talk about all these advanced analytics and EPA per play and everything like that. And throughout the season, we were like, man, Georgia Tech's defense seems really low. It doesn't feel like, it's translating to the level that they're playing. I feel like they're playing a lot better than these advanced analytics say. And the past couple of weeks, I mean, that has just straight up caught up to you entirely. I mean, Brent Key talked about he addressed the team, addressed the defense. He's like, guys, we got to play better. And you've seen it on the field. That linebacking core has been absolutely demolished, especially in the Boston College game. It hasn't been pretty. And it's gotten to a point now where Georgia Tech is favored against Pitt, right? I believe.
Yeah, by 2.5. I mean, but like that, for anybody that knows anything about odds, is usually the home team is given like a 2, possibly 3-point bump for being at home. So they basically view these teams as equals. And I actually think at SP Plus, I think Georgia Tech's 35 and Pitt's 36. So it's like they're basically viewed as the same team.
Mm-hmm. In those numbers, just defensively, I think the offense was fine. I think there's, no shouting that.
628 yards, I would say so.
Yeah. But the defense has gotten to be so much of a problem where, I normally would be yelling about Georgia Tech being 16 with the record that they have, but, I kind of see it reasonable. I mean, that game was ugly, and I thought for a large portion of that game that Georgia Tech was going to drop it.
Yeah, and I mean, the question now is like, is this just what it is now? Or because here's the thing, I don't think me and you were blowing smoke up people's butts or anything about like the defense in terms of like personnel and how good we thought it could be. We thought it could be similar to last year's in that you bend but you don't break, and they did a great job of that for a large portion of the season. Like they kept teams out of the end zone. They did fairly well on third down. Like some of the fourth down stuff is really bad, especially for those that remember the Virginia Tech game. But like I don't think me and you've ever sit here and said, well, the personnel is just so good. It's inexcusable to why Georgia Tech can't have a good defense. It's just troublesome to see this 2 weeks in a row. And, I thought Boston College would get some passing yards. Like they did have a top 30 passing offense coming into this game. And like Lewis Bond and those guys, like they're not, I know they're 1-10, but like that's the best part of their team by like a very large margin. But the fact that just the running game also, like Boston College nearly having 200 yards. I gave my whole spiel on Saturday. It's very troublesome heading into a game where, look, Pitt's offense looked like garbage against Notre Dame. That Georgia Tech and Notre Dame's defenses are on two opposite ends of the spectrum in college football. Like it's when they've played bad defenses, they've lit them up, and that's concerning heading into Saturday. But we're going to preview that game on Thursday, like we always do. We will have a game preview again. Sorry for some, I've been on my honeymoon, traveled to Boston, so our schedules have just been super wonky. Appreciate you guys sticking in with us. I know sometimes we get a little off schedule, but always appreciate that. But any other thoughts on Boston College, on the rankings, or just I don't know, just in general?
Just the one other thing I wanted to point out, just looking at, Boston College stats throughout the year, obviously their only win is an FCS win, but the only other time that they've ever passed for the amount of yards that they did, or even close, was that double overtime game in week 2 against Michigan State. Other than that, Boston College has not even touched the 350 pass yards number. And I mean, that's very scary for me because, against Pitt, they didn't pass for 100 yards. They passed for 117 against Clemson. Georgia Tech just seems like a bad defense.
Boston College's pass game is okay. Like that's just what I mean. It's fine. It's the best part of their team because the rest of their team is terrible. Like, I mean, their defense, as you saw, it's worse than Georgia Tech's, and their running game for pretty much the entire season up till Saturday has been non-existent. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, don't get me confused. Like, I'm sitting here trying to puff up Boston College's passing attack. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying it's the best part of their team. But a win's a win. Like, I led the pot off with that. Like, even when they win and it looks ugly, like, I'm going to focus on the win. And like, that's what happened. And then, like, that's been Brent Key's message too. Like, they've wanted to really push in, like, hey, we won the game. I think he fully understands. Like, you can see it in his answers and everything. Like, he understands if they play defense the way they played the past 2 weeks or past 2 games, I guess I should say, they will lose Saturday. He knows it. I think everybody knows it, and like we need to see the absolute best effort, because this is, I mean, it's not hyperbole to say that this is the biggest game in recent memory for Georgia Tech. And then when I say recent memory, I mean in the last 10 or so years, like since they last made the ACC title game in 2014. This is a huge opportunity. It's the biggest game of the Brent Key era. I mean, you have a chance to go to the ACC title game, which would, be a play-in spot for a play-in spot for a playoff spot. And then, whatever you do against Georgia would, be gravy. So it's a massive game, and he understands that, that they got to show up and play, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think, like I talked about earlier, you've seen 2 different Georgia Tech teams throughout the season, and, you need to see that Georgia Tech defense in the first half. Because, again, Georgia Tech never had an elite defense, but it was never to the level that it was.
They got stops when it mattered. I mean, you go to the Syracuse game, and look, Syracuse's offense is horrific. But, that Syracuse wasn't able to get a bunch outside of a couple drives, they held Duke in the red zone. Most of the game against Virginia Tech outside of, we did point out the run defense at the time, but, the Colorado game, they really settled down after. And so you just need to get back to they have to be able to affect the quarterback in some way. I guess I don't need to get into that. We're going to preview the game Thursday, but anything else?
Just need to start seeing turnovers out of that defense. That's the big thing. You can give up a lot of yards if you get turnovers, but if you get no turnovers, it's ugly.
As good as Mason Heinchel has been since he's been inserted into the starter role, he does turn the ball over. He also, I think I read on PFF today, he has like 14 turnover-worthy throws, which is kind of high considering he hasn't started like the whole season. So mistakes could be had, but you got to be able to create them. So, like I said, we'll be back Thursday to preview it. May have a special guest incoming for you guys. Definitely have the instant reaction show, win or lose Saturday. But that's going to do it for us. If you're watching the show, haven't subscribed, love if you did so before you get out of here. Like the video, hit that notification bell for whenever the content goes live. Follow us wherever you get your podcast. Really appreciate you guys, and we will see you Thursday.